world, and I'm going to try and get all that death ended.
Joining me live now is Kristine Berzina from the think tank German Marshall Fund. She's been following the developments with the US's push for Ukraine to sign a deal allowing access to its raw earth minerals. So Ukraine's mineral wealth has certainly been thrown into the spotlight here, with Donald Trump wanting to take control of its resources in exchange for some military support. Trump clearly wants Ukraine's minerals, but exactly what is up for grabs, and how much are these minerals actually worth?
So Ukraine has a lot of mineral wealth. This goes from everything from coal, which is sort of an old school technology that we know of well, to things that are necessary for this century and the future of the century. So we are looking at graphite, lithium, and the rare earths that are necessary for a lot of future technologies. Half of this, or a little more than half of this mineral wealth that Ukraine has, is in the occupied territories. So on the one hand, from a Ukrainian perspective, it could seem that Donald Trump's interest in Ukraine's minerals could be a good thing, because then Donald Trump would have an interest in making sure that Ukraine is in control of the territories in the east that have most of this wealth. On the other hand, there is significant wealth also now just inside of where the front lines are, so about 10 miles inside of Ukrainian-controlled territory, and there's also some in the far west of the country. Donald Trump has said that he wants 50% of this. And that's a little bit tough, because we're talking about what Donald Trump's initial ask was about $500 billion, which is a lot more than the Americans have given Ukraine thus far. And it did not come with any guarantees for future security. And this strikes the Ukrainians as a bad deal. Repaying plus some with nothing promised for the future at a time when Donald Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin, calling Zelensky a dictator, and seeking good business deals in Russia, perhaps gives the Ukrainians pause. But despite the high friction and tension that there is between Trump and Zelensky this week, there have been good meetings between Kellogg, who is the special envoy for Ukrainian peace from the U.S. administration, and President Zelensky, and a lot of work being done in Kiev to figure out the right kind of deal to counteroffer to the U.S. administration.
And Kristine, just jumping in there, both sides have said, though, that U.S. and Ukraine are nearing a deal on these minerals. What are the key rifts, though, to reaching it? How close do you think they really are?
Well, I think the question is, well, how much, under what conditions, and what kind of resources are on the table? Some of the previous deals have not been about simply the question of future mines, but also existing infrastructure. So here we're looking at the scope of what is actually in Ukrainian control. Once Ukraine has a ceasefire and has peace, is it able to use its own resources to rebuild itself? Or is it going to be long-term indebted to the United States beyond what the U.S. has already given Ukraine, in a way that would handicap its ability to emerge as a healthy economy again in the future? But offending the United States in many ways is the worst thing that Ukraine can do, because it is very much dependent on the United States still for military support, which is still coming in based upon the previous appropriations that the U.S. has given, and even on basic day-to-day technologies. For example, Starlink, which is required for Ukraine both for civilian and military purposes. And even the question of Starlink has reported to be part of the negotiation, with Ukraine being strong-armed into playing well with Washington if it wants to continue to receive the benefits it has been accustomed to receiving from the U.S.
Yes, you mentioned there U.S. threatening to cut Ukraine's access to Starlink. I mean, the demand from Trump for the minerals deal, is it fair? I mean, how big of a burden is this going to be for Ukraine during wartime?
$500 billion is not fair when the U.S. has certainly not given nearly as much to the Ukrainians, and a significant portion of the Ukraine aid has stayed in the United States in order to refurbish and help out facilities and backfill things that the U.S. has given. So the notion, and the way that Trump sometimes portrays it, of suitcases of cash and materials going to Ukraine is not accurate. But of course, a commitment would be very real to have that much money coming back to the United States. And a good objective here would be fairness, but fairness not only retrospectively, but also for what Ukraine desperately needs, which is to have security guarantees in the future. Trump is very interested in signing a very quick peace. That is the primary objective. And in the CPAC conference this weekend, Waltz, who's the national security advisor, has also talked about Trump wanting a Nobel Peace Prize for coming up with this deal. Now, that deal is going to have to stick. It has to be a good deal, which means that Ukraine needs to be able to be secure and it needs to be able to be prosperous. And it's up to Ukraine to demand from the United States those details that will get it there.
All right, and we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much to Kristine Berzina from the think tank German Marshall Fund.
Thank you.